I've said for my whole career that you never cook with anybody without learning something. Cooking with people, it's just the best. There's always something you discover. Either you discover it because they're helping you know something you didn't know before, you discover it because you're teaching them, and it forces you to articulate what you're thinking, what you know, and somehow that helps you see it in a new light. Or you question what you're doing and you think, could have done this better, or look, here's a way to do it differently. All of these discoveries happen from cooking with other people. One of the things we're going to do is a series on rice and beans. Rice and beans, or more broadly, grains and legumes, are arguably the most important foods in the world. Legumes are the most important protein source in the world. Grains are the most widely eaten foods in the world, the biggest source of calories in the world. And so we're going to start with kind of homegrown flavors, let's say. And we're going to move on to international versions of rice and beans. And this is a project that's going to go on indefinitely. So it starts now. Welcome. And we'll be seeing you more soon.
Great to be on film with you, and to actually be able to see each other all virtually, in that case.
Better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and my parents are from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm actually in Houston right now, so this is not my usual kitchen. I'm at my oldest sister's home. Of course I've used this kitchen before, but having this much space for me is just glorious. But yes, I guess to introduce myself, I'm a food and travel writer and a home cook, and I really started digging into it in grad school. I will say this, we're doing red beans and rice today, and there's no one way to make red beans and rice, as many of us know. And so this is a way that kind of came out of, it emerged out of the recipe that I grew up with as a kid. But was kind of shifted and changed for my grad school life and schedule. The first step is actually going to be cooking our beans. I'm going to show you guys these Kayla beans. They're the brand I think is the best. If you're in the South, you definitely can find them. Red kidney beans are fine, but if you have Kayla, definitely use them. So I soaked a bag of these last night, and I'm just going to go ahead and add them to our pot. So I'm going to add a cup of chicken broth, and then I'm going to add 5 cups of water. Turn the heat on high, and we're gonna bring these to a boil. And right now, I'm just gonna heat up this skillet. We're gonna get that oil going. In any other moment, I would be cutting up my andouille sausage right now, but I've already got it cut up here. I am very excited because this is another thing that is so hard to find in the Northeast. And I have this spicy, juicy, delicious andouille sausage down here.
What did you use for sausage when you were up in the north?
So I found at Whole Foods actually a pre-cooked andouille sausage that I would use, and it was a good substitute. You can also use chorizo as a great substitute. So I think our oil is looking good. We've got 1 onion here, diced celery here, and then we've got some minced garlic here. You want to use about 3 cloves. Then I got some green onion, about 2 stalks of it. But since this is going to cook with our beans, you don't have to cook it a whole lot. So this is looking good. We still have that beautiful green color here, so I'm just going to take that off the stove. And I also just heard that my oven went off, so the preheating is done. So I'm going to add my andouille sausage to the oven here. And I'm just going to heat this for about 20 minutes.
And what's your oven at? What's your temperature setting?
It's at 400. I'm going to show you guys talk about some of the seasonings that we're going to use today. We've got a teaspoon of sage, about half a teaspoon of thyme. We've got our teaspoon of cayenne pepper, which that is totally up to you. Then I've got something that is actually a pantry staple for me. This is Tony's Creole seasoning. And
Tony,
this is the stuff that I will always have with me. Until I really started cooking more seriously, I just called it Tony's. I didn't call it Tony's Creole seasoning like when I was in the kitchen working with my mom and she said, get X and Y ingredients. She said, get the Tony's. And I knew exactly what she was talking about. So, and then finally we've got our bay leaves, which a lot of people say are the lucky bay leaves. So what we like to do is kind of let the beans take in those veggies. When they're done boiling and I've lowered them to cook for a bit, I'm gonna add the veggies. Let them cook for about 20-30 minutes or so, and then add the dry herbs. So we're boiling here with the beans. So I'm gonna go ahead and add these sauteed veggies directly into the pot. And so now we're gonna drop this heat to medium low. In the words of my mom, you don't want it too low and you don't want it too high. So you want it to you want it simmering, but you still need it to be cooking. So we're gonna drop that heat, and these are gonna cook for about half an hour or so before we add in our dry seasonings. About 30 minutes into our cooking, we're just gonna add our dry herbs. And so we're just gonna add that in here. And then you also wanna add some salt and pepper.
And you didn't add any salt until now, right,
Yeah,
Kayla?
yeah, that's right. Just gonna add some pepper here. So I'm gonna cover those again. And if you'll see right here, I have my andouille sausage. It is done. We're gonna add that closer to the 45-minute mark. And we're gonna add another Texas-friendly ingredient, Rotel tomatoes. If you can't find Rotel, that's totally fine. Essentially, you just want a can of diced tomatoes. So right now, we're just letting the beans take in the seasonings and the flavors from the vegetables, and we're gonna let these cook for about an hour. We're looking good. So the beans look fantastic. They're looking just tender and juicy. So we're almost there. We are gonna just add our pepper. My mom loves the crunchiness of the bell pepper, so she just doesn't want it to cook too long. So as the bell peppers are cooking, I'm just gonna show, we're gonna use our rotel. So these are gonna go in here. I'm gonna add in my oven roasted andouille sausage, which I'm gonna admit I took a bite of it during our break and it was delicious. So there's a little bit less andouille sausage than we started with, but it was too good to pass up. All right, our bell pepper's looking good, so we're gonna turn this off.
So really, just like the first vegetables, you barely cook those.
Exactly.
That's unusual.
It is different. And again, it's just trying to get that freshness in. And our final ingredient, outside of our bell pepper, a teaspoon of sugar here. And we've got some lime juice from half a lime. That lime gives it like an acidic taste that we really like. And that sugar, it doesn't sweeten it to the point where, it's like sweet beans, but it just offsets some of the spices that are here, like the cayenne. So I'm just gonna give it...
I guess it takes the edge off a little bit.
Exactly. And we're gonna just let this cook for another 15 to 20 minutes and we're done. So I'm gonna put the cover on. While we're waiting, this is a great time to cook your rice. You can cook it in advance, that's totally fine, but this is a really good time when you can go ahead and cook your rice for your beans. Give it about 15-20 minutes and we'll be done.
Anything on the rice? To use any particular kind of rice? Any unusual techniques? Anything?
No unusual techniques. We use long grain white rice. So that's what we use. Basmati also works well, but nothing in particular that we do that's special to it. The beans came out great. They're tender, perfectly juicy, not too thick, but not too runny. Andouille sausage is looking good. So I've got my plate of rice, my bowl of rice rather. And
I always like it when people like their own cooking.
It happens occasionally. And I actually made
me too.
I made some cornbread earlier today, and I have to have cornbread with my beans. It is not a requirement, but I would highly suggest it. If you enjoy cornbread, it goes great with red beans and rice. So, not a requirement by any means.
Well, we'll ask you for that recipe too, I'm sure.
We are all set. So if it's okay with you, Mark, I'm going to take a bite.
Go for it. I'm envious. How long has your mom been making those beans?
I'm 29, so at least 29 years. And my oldest sister is 46, so I'm going to assume it's been over 46 years. She is a terrific home cook, and yeah, this was a staple meal for us coming up. And this was one of those meals she could make, and with a really busy schedule and 4 kids, this was something that could feed us all week.
Thank her for us, and thank you from me. I can't wait to make your beans, and I'll see you soon.
I definitely will. Thanks so much, Mark. This was a pleasure.